Every great pub has a delicious fish and chips recipe, or at least they should, but you don't have to go out. You can now make a delicious fish and chips right in your air fryer at home, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Welcome to The Salt and Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today, we are going to bring the pub food home. We're going to make it at home, that is, making our own air fryer fish and chips. This recipe is so fantastic. It was shockingly good. Honestly, I could not tell the difference that it was not deep fried. This is amazing. And it's really easy to do. We're going to start off with a couple of breading stations here. So we need a flour, then we need a wet batter, and then we have our breadcrumb batter. So I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. I still have my fish in the refrigerator. I will take that out just before I start to batter them. You want to thaw and keep your fish in the refrigerator until just before using. You also want to thaw them, if you can, above, put a tray, and then if you have a roasting pan, that works really great so that any liquid drips off and doesn't stay around your fish, because you don't want your fish too wet when you go to put them in the batter. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is mix up flour. Because the fish is kind of on the wet side, you want to start with a flour. And what I'm using here is a half of a cup of just all-purpose flour, and then I have 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of fine grind sea salt, and a half of a teaspoon of black pepper. And that sugar is, of course, optional, but really, these fish and chips are amazing. So I hope you give it a try with the sugar. Or you could use a sugar substitute if you wanted to. So just mix that up. All right, that looks good. And now we are going to make our wet batter. And this is a wet batter that I do a lot with a lot of different recipes, and I'm not changing anything. I'm using a half of a cup of cold liquid. In this case, I'm gonna use beer, but I've also tested the recipe with water and it works just fine. So beer or water, whichever you prefer. And then 1 large egg. And then just take a fork and whisk this up a little bit just to break up the egg and get it incorporated with the beer. Then we're gonna sift in 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour, or at least I should say we're gonna sift in as much as it takes to get the batter to the consistency that we want. Now for this recipe, the consistency of the batter is a little bit thicker than some of the other ones, but I'm still using 3/4 of a cup of flour. So I'm just going to put in about 1/4 of a cup at a time or so here, and use a little sifter and go across the top. Now it's important that you don't whisk this in. You want to fold in the flour. There we go. Once you do that, you want to take a fork or a chopstick and you just want to fold in the flour. So don't really be aggressive with this, because you don't want to develop the gluten in the flour and make it really sticky and gummy. In some of my other recipes that call for this same 1 egg, half a cup of liquid, and 3/4 cup of flour, I have to add just a tad bit more liquid to it to get it to the right consistency. But what I found with this, and it being fish, that a little bit thicker was better. So you'll see that I take this just a little bit thicker, so I won't be adding any more water, unless, of course, it's just way too thick, which I don't think it's going to be. So now I'm going to incorporate the rest of this flour, kind of smooth out any lumps, and then we will get our fish out and we will start to coat everything up. All right, so there we go. So this would be like a thick pancake batter, okay? Usually I go for a thin pancake batter, but that did not hold on to the fish as well. So I took this just a little bit thicker, and it works really well. Now, as you're breading, you can, add a little bit more water if you need to. You can add a little bit more flour. So just go by the way it's coating the fish. You want a nice thin layer of it. And you want it to coat the fish completely. Now, to the breadcrumbs, which this is 1 cup of breadcrumbs, I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of fine grind sea salt, and a half of a teaspoon of pepper. These ingredients here are enough to probably coat I would say 6 to 8 pieces of fish. I'm gonna coat 6, even though I'm only gonna fry a few up here, air fry them. I'm gonna keep some in the freezer for another day. So let me go grab the fish. We're gonna get to coating them, and then we need to freeze them. That's super important, and I'll explain that in just a second. So each of these cod fillets are about 4 ounces, and they were previously frozen. So I let them thaw in the refrigerator out of their packaging on a roasting tray so that the liquid went underneath. And then I just sat them on a paper towel just to absorb the rest of the liquid. So you want the fish to be as dry as it possibly can. Then you're going to dredge it in the flour mixture. Let me grab my little spoon here. You want just a very light coating of the flour, just so that the wet batter sticks. So I even get rid of any excess, but I do go on the sides too so that the entire fish is lightly coated. And I haven't quite figured out how to do this without getting my hands dirty, but I try to minimize it as much as possible. Then you want to put your fish into the wet batter here. Take a fork and just sort of spoon it over. This is where it changes up a little bit from some previous recipes too. So once I have it battered, I do let the excess drip off. But now when we put it into the breading, I let it sit there for a few minutes. And that is so the breadcrumbs combine with this batter and stay put so it doesn't just fall off the fish. So we're gonna go just like that. If there's any batter that's not sticking there, just go ahead and use your fork. And I think I need another spoon. And then spoon over and press it up against the sides here. Now, of course, you could use whatever seasonings you wanted, but I found this blend with a little bit of sugar and salt and pepper, really, it just tasted just like fish and chips that you would get that were deep fried at the pub. All right, then I let that sit just for a few minutes while I go on and put the flour mixture on another one. You could do several in the flour if you wanted to, it's no problem. I just give a little pat with my hands here and make sure that it's all gonna stay on that fish. And let's grab the fork here. Flip it over. Again, put the breading back over top. And if you see the texture here, that gives crunch. It's amazing. So don't worry about that when you see like little pieces of the fish that have more breading on them. All right, and then put it on to a parchment lined tray because we're gonna put it in the freezer. They need to freeze for a few hours, at least an hour, before you air fry them. And that is so that you don't overcook your fish. So your fish is nice and flaky, but your breading is super crispy. It's delicious. All right, there we go. So we are all done with our fish. Definitely could have gotten about 8. I would have squeezed out 8. I might have had to thin my batter down a little bit, the wet batter in the middle, but definitely enough flour and breadcrumbs to do 8 of those fillets, no problems whatsoever. But you won't be able to cook them all at once unless you have a super, super big air fryer. All right, so let me pop these in the freezer, and I'm gonna clean this up, and then we will get our potatoes out so that I can cut them for the chips part of our air fryer fish and chips. All right, so while the fish is in the freezer freezing, we're gonna make up the chip portion, which is we call French fries in the US, chips over in the UK. And we're gonna do that with 2 russet potatoes. This is 1.5 pounds of russets. You could use one potato, 2 potatoes, 3 potatoes, whatever you want to use is perfectly fine. But we need to get them soaking, so this is a great time to do that. Now this one is flat on the one side. Well, it's actually flat on both sides, so I don't really have to cut off a piece. But if you needed to make a slice, you can do that. Make a slice down about 1/4 inch thick, and then you have a good flat surface for cutting your potato. Now, this one, I am not gonna take the skins off because I like my chips with the skins on, but you could certainly take them off if you want. Cutting them in about, probably I would say 1/2 inch slice, just about. I'm not gonna be too particular or anything about that. You just don't want a whole lot of really big ones and little small ones or they won't cook evenly, but as long as you're right around the 1/2 inch mark, that'll be fine. Or if you want them all 1/4 inch, that would be fine. You would just decrease your cook time. If you wanted them thicker, like wedge fries, you would increase your cook time a little bit. So you can make them however you like. All right, that's it. Didn't take any time at all. Super easy to cut French fries at home. It is also super important to soak them in water. This is going to pull some of the starch out, and it's what allows the fries to get super crispy. Otherwise, if you don't soak them, they tend to start to fall apart before they really crisp up because of the starch content. So we really want to pull as much starch out as we can. I let these soak for a couple of hours while I let the fish freeze. But if you wanted to make your fish up ahead of time, a couple days before, whatever, you can just leave them to soak for about, an hour or two. Or you could put them in the refrigerator, but you do need to change the water out periodically because the starch will saturate everything and then not pull any more starch out. So if you want to leave them overnight, just make sure you change the water out before you go to sleep and then again in the morning and you'll be fine. So it's been about an hour and I just checked on the fish and they are almost completely frozen. So that's pretty quick. And our French fries, or chips in this case, have been soaking for an hour or so. Now what we're gonna do is dry them off. I don't know if I'm gonna cook them all in one batch. I doubt I will, but I am gonna start to dry them off on some paper towels here. Set those over. Let's see. Well, let me go ahead and I'll do them. Since I'm going to probably cook maybe 3 of the pieces of fish, depends on how many fit. Let me do half of a batch of the fries now and half of a batch later. And I'm always going to call them fries because that's what we call them here in the U.S. All right, so once you dry them off, you can put them on a tray or in a bowl, whatever you prefer. We're going to spritz with a little bit of oil and season with a little bit of salt and pepper is what I like to do. Or you can just season with salt, or you can skip that altogether. Completely up to you. Now, let's get the Ninja Foodi preheated. I always like to preheat any air fryer that I'm working with, and I'm gonna do that on the broil function on the Ninja Foodi because that is the hottest setting. And we're gonna go for 10 full minutes. The basket is in. That's what I'm gonna use to cook the fish and chips, is the basket. I'm also gonna use a rack so that we can do both at the same time. This will vary depending on what style air fryer you have. If you have the grill, you can start the fries and then sort of push them over to the side and then add the fish in. The fries take a little bit longer to cook than the fish, twice as long, honestly. So we're gonna cook these about 12 to 15 minutes, and then we will put the fish in. So if you're using another type of air fryer, just stagger the cook times, or you can do them in batches. You can fully cook the French fries, let them cool on a cooling rack, and then throw them back in at the last minute and rewarm them. That works as well. So we're gonna go a full 10 minutes on the hottest setting that your air fryer or Ninja Foodi or Instant Pot Duo Crisp has. Just the hottest setting will work great. Spritz with some oil, whatever kind of oil you like. I usually either use a canola or avocado oil. I don't usually use olive oil when I'm making something like this. And I don't measure this at all, so I just sprinkle a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt. So that might be 1/4 of a teaspoon and 1/2 of a teaspoon, if that. and then toss them around a little bit just so they're completely coated. All right, so we're all done preheating, so open up the lid, and we're just gonna dump these right on in. Now, people always ask, can you do more than a single layer of fries at a time? And yes, you can. Now, I don't think I would go much more than this, just because I don't think that they would get evenly crispy enough, but you certainly can add more than just a single layer at a time. All right, now we're gonna close the lid. We're gonna switch over to the air crisp function. We wanna go to 400 degrees and just hit the start. It'll default to 20 minutes, that's perfectly fine. About every 3 to 5 minutes, I'm gonna toss those fries around so that they continue to evenly crisp up and brown. And I go by looks mostly because, of course, you know, I cut fries a little bit differently each time. So I go by looks more than timing, but usually it takes somewhere between 12 and 15 minutes to get them halfway cooked. Then we're gonna grab out our fish from the freezer, and we're gonna get that layered on top with this canning rack, which is 7.9 inches in diameter, so it fits right in the basket, and it has 2-inch legs, and I will link to that below in the video description. It's available on Amazon. And then I just put these protectors on the bottoms because where this will fall right through the basket, so I just put these right on. They are oven protectors that I just cut to size. There we go. All right, so it's been about 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and take a peek and give them a little flip around here. And they don't look like much right now. When I flip them at this point, I try to be pretty careful because they are not crispy at all and you don't want to break them up. So I try to kind of just pick up and move around and do the best I can. All right, we're gonna go another 5 minutes and then we'll take a look. All right, it's been another 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek, and I can see some changes. Don't know if you can see that in the video or not, but I'm seeing some blistering, and that means we're about to get crunchy, so that's really good. And again, I'm gonna be pretty careful, because if you're not, you're gonna break them up like I just broke that one. And just try to flip them around the best you can. I'm not doing such a great job, but I really do not want to break them up. All right, now I'm gonna put the rack in. Oh, you know what? I'm not gonna be able to use these things because I just realized if I use them, I'm gonna really mess up my French fries. So we're just gonna try to be really careful here. Set the rack right in and go back down for another 5 minutes. So that'll be 15 minutes total. And then we will get our fish on top and finish air crisping it all up. And then we'll be ready to eat. All right, so I took 4 of the fillets out. I'm gonna see if I can fit all 4. I'm not sure if I will, but I left 2 in the freezer because I'm gonna cook those later. So you can certainly go up to this point and freeze. Once they're individually frozen, you can throw them into a bag, that's no problem, and then get them out as you like. So this is something you can definitely prep ahead. Now what I'm gonna do here is, actually let me flip them over. Where I'm gonna put the bottom side onto that rack, I'm gonna go ahead and spritz with some oil. I can spritz the tops now or when it gets into the Ninja Foodie, so either way is fine there. That won't make any difference. All right, so let's go ahead and open this up. The fries look good. If you wanted to give them another flip, you could. I'm not gonna worry about it though. All right, let's see how many pieces we can get on there. I don't know. I think 3 is gonna be it. Yeah. 3's it for this air fryer for this size. All right, then spritz the tops with some oil of your choice. You wanna try to make sure all the breadcrumbs are covered with the oil. That's what's gonna give you the best crispiness. If you can see that it's dry, what's gonna happen is it's going to look dry. Okay, it's not gonna get really crispy. It's gonna look on the dry side. You'll know the difference. All right, so now we are gonna go up to 12 minutes. We're staying on air crisp on 400. I'm gonna pop this back in the freezer real quick since I can't cook it right now. All right, so it's just about been 6 minutes, so let's go ahead and take a peek. And one thing I wanted to mention, the reason why I put this rack in to get hot is so there's less chance of the fish sticking on the underside. So we're gonna hope that it doesn't stick at all. I prefer doing the fish actually in the basket, but if you wanna do fish and chips at the same time, this is the way to do it. It works the best if you have this rack. All right, now let's carefully pick the fish up. You know, I think it could go a few minutes. I'm gonna keep going on this one side, and the reason is because I want this side to be completely crunchy and ready to go, because once I flip it, it's not gonna get a whole lot of air movement because we've got our French fries down there. So let's go another 3 minutes on 400 and get it to the point where you would want to serve it. Then you flip it and finish up the other side. And I've cooked the fish as long as 15 minutes before, so we only set the clock for 12, and it was not overdone. So freezing it is super important so that you don't overcook your fish, and it turns out great every single time. Oh yes, now that is perfect. All right, perfect. Now I've been sitting here thinking, now how am I gonna flip it the easiest? I have a fish spatula, which usually works really well when you have a lot of room. And then I've got my bigger tongs, and then I thought, I've got these little ones. Maybe these will work the best. Let's see if I can grab it and flip it. Oh, I did. Okay, 1 down, 2 to go. You want to be careful here because you don't want the breading to come off. They're looking really, really good. All right, so let's go the rest of the 4 minutes. By that time, the fish is definitely gonna be done enough, but we could probably even go another few if we needed it a little bit browner. So I'll just use my judgment, and I encourage you to use your judgment when you're cooking. The times and temps are not absolute. Things change and your food cooks differently. Go by the way it looks. If it's not crispy enough or brown enough for you, keep on going. Just check every 2 minutes so it doesn't get over brown or burnt on top. All right, we are all finished. It's been 12 minutes for the fish, and it looks amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. So now I'm just gonna carefully lift them here and put them onto a cooling rack. If you're not serving them right away, you definitely want to put them on a cooling rack so that they don't steam on a plate and you lose your crispiness. I've got to get this up, and we're going to take a peek at those fries because if we need to go a little bit longer, we certainly can. Now I've got to kind of wrestle with this a minute. There we go. That wasn't too bad. I usually have a little knob there. All right. So look, these fries look amazing, but there are some places where I want to get a little bit crispier. So I'm going to go just another 2 minutes on the 400 air crisp. And they're perfect. Now, just go ahead and dump these out into our basket here. Again, you wouldn't want to put them on a plate, especially if you're not going to serve them right away or they'll steam. They won't be as crunchy. So there we go, our fish and chips right in the air fryer. Now let me give them a taste. These are amazing. They're hot too. All right, let's go ahead and get that one. Now, I like to serve my fries with a malt vinegar. That's my favorite. And then my fish with some tartar sauce that I whipped up. No need to buy tartar sauce. It's super easy to make, and I will definitely include my recipe in the written post on my website, so you can check that out, and I'll link to that below as well. So a little bit of malt vinegar on my fries is the way I like to do it. And then a little bit of tartar sauce right there. All right, let's try these fries here. Oh my gosh. They are so good. I need a little salt though, just a tiny bit. I usually salt them once I get them out of the air fryer a little bit too. Totally up to you. But they are absolutely delicious. Crunchy. Perfect. Leaving the skin on really makes a difference. These remind me of Thrasher's French fries, which is an Ocean City, Maryland favorite. Oh my gosh, they're so delicious. All right, let's cut into this fish. I'm gonna cut straight down here so you can see it's nice and flaky and crunchy. So good. Oh my gosh. I need to use my French fry to get a hold of that. Oh my goodness. It's amazing. Like, I'm just blown away by this air fryer. And any air fryer will make this recipe, you know. I'm sure some work better than others, but I am just simply amazed at all you can do with an air fryer. This tastes like I went out and ordered fish and chips in a restaurant. It's absolutely delicious. I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, make it yours, make it delicious, and keep it real.